Hi, I'm James, and today on the desk I have this, which is a ThinkPad, Lenovo ThinkPad T460s. And so we're going to look at the upgrade potential and servicing options for this machine. So obviously this is not compatible with Windows 11 as it's on too old generation of processor, but it is still a usable machine with various upgrade options. So we're going to take a look at what we can do and how you can keep these machines going in the interim. If you are interested in sort of videos on how this machine can be used beyond Windows 10, then I am probably going to look at this again in the future as well, so do keep an eye out for that. So what we have is we have a Philips PH0 screwdriver, and we have these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screws on the base. So we're going to undo all of these, and what we'll see is as we've done this, it's popped the back of the chassis up slightly because these are retained screws, so they should stay in the base, I believe. He says double checking. And then we also have our pry tool here. The tools and parts that I'm using are all linked in the description if you want to see. So where we have this sort of back seam between the base and the chassis, we're just going to slide in our pry tool there. This is big enough that you could probably just use fingernails if you need to, but I like to use the pry tool just for sort of a safety aspect to it. And with that, we're inside the machine. So once we're inside the system, our first job is to disconnect the batteries. This is so that as we're working, we don't accidentally power on the machine or touch anything which may be electrically active and damage the board. And unusually, this machine actually has 2 batteries inside it. So one at the top of the chassis, one at the bottom. And these are disconnected by removing them. In each case, we just have screws holding them in. So for the bottom battery, we have 3 screws. I'm going to place the screws off to the side on a magnetic pad I have here. So for the first, we remove the 3 screws. We are then just going to lift this plastic tape or sticker, and then with that done, we can take one of the pieces of plastic here and just ease the battery up to disconnect it. We're going to remove that from the chassis and place it to one side. And then we're going to do the same for the other battery. So this one is just held in with 2 screws. And then again, we have a little sticky plastic piece here, which we want to ease up, and then we can use that to pull up the battery and place it to one side. And with that done, we've now disconnected the battery from the system, and no, it's not going to be accidentally powered on or similar. If you do want to replace the CMOS battery, this is just down here, and you have a little connector onto the board, so you can slot that out to disconnect it, so just grabbing either side of the connector and pulling down. This is held in with some sticky tape, so I'm not going to remove it right now, but if you want to replace it, stick in a new one here. You can buy these pre-wrapped with the little rat's tail on them, and then connect it back in like so. So we have 2 parts to this video now. We are going to first of all be looking at upgrades, and then secondly some maintenance. So in terms of upgrades, we have the memory. Half of the memory on this system is soldered to the main board and can't be upgraded. So this system has 8 GB of memory, but we do have a 4 GB module on the board here that we can replace. The rest is soldered to the motherboard, so can't practically be replaced by the end user. We also have a M2 SSD. This is a SATA type drive, and I don't believe this supports NVMe drives, so make sure you buy a SATA drive if you're replacing that. And then we also have the wireless card. For maintenance, we're going to be looking at obviously how to replace the batteries, which we've already removed, servicing the heatsink and fan, replacing the DC jack, and then also how to replace the keyboard. So turning our attention to the RAM as our first upgrade, we see we have the single module here, and to remove this we can simply pull either side on these metal clasps and the memory will pop up. We can then grip it and pull it to remove, and to reinsert we similarly have it at this upward angle, slot it in and push down until it clicks into place. So extremely simple to do. The SSD is also very easy to replace. So by bringing in our screwdriver onto this screw on the end that retains it, if we unscrew this and then lift the drive up, we can then grab it and slide it out from the slot. To then refit, we slot into place with it angled upwards and then press down and do up the screw to hold it in. Obviously, if you're replacing the SSD, you either need to clone the contents of your existing drive onto the new one, or do a clean install of the operating system of your choice, and we do have videos on this on the channel covering how to do this on just general systems. Above this we have the Wi-Fi adapter. Now Lenovo do often block this so that you can only install an approved adapter to this, so it may be the case that this can only be replaced. I don't have a sort of Wi-Fi 6 card to hand to test with, unfortunately. But in terms of removing this, so we have two connectors, so we have main and we have aux. Interestingly, the colouring of them does not match the colouring on the card for which aerial is which. So the grey goes to main and the black is going to aux in this machine. And to remove the card, similarly to the SSD, we have a single screw. Undoing that, the card will lift up and we can slide it out. And then to refit, make sure you're not going to trap the cables beneath it. Press down. In this case I just need to tweak that wireless WAN card as well, just so it's not blocking that. Screw back into place, and the hardest bit of this all is reattaching the cables. So here we're going to take our black. I'm just going to route the grey out of the way, so again we're not trapping things that we need. And these, because they're very small, are quite hard to align. So it just takes a little bit of patience to get it lined up. And clicked back down into place. And then the same for the other connector. We want to just line this up. And click it back down like so. So with this done, that covers the upgrades that we can make on this machine, and we'll turn our attention to some of the maintenance as well. So looking towards the fan and heatsink, so for this system, because we only have integrated graphics, there are 4 screws here. If there's a model with discrete graphics, there would be an additional bit of heat pipe and heat spreader here with a couple additional screws as well. But the first thing we're going to do is, using just fingernails, pull out the fan connector. Now we want to undo the heatsink. And what we're going to look at here is just cleaning out the heatsink on the system, and also replacing the thermal paste. As these machines age, obviously the fan can get clogged up with dirt and dust, and the thermal paste can get quite dry and become less effective. So with those 4 screws undone, we should then simply be able to pop up the heatsink and lift it clear of the chassis. With that done, we now have our fan and heatsink assembly on our desk, and first thing I'm going to do is swap to a smaller screwdriver bit. So I'm going down to a Philips 00 piece, and we have 2 3 screws here. Yeah, 3 screws holding in the fan to the heatsink. So we're going to gently remove those. So we want to pull free this tape holding the fan cable. With that done, we can then lift up the fan. So if we need to replace the fan completely, there's another bit of tape here which we can just pull free, and we can replace that fan as a whole unit. Alternatively, we then also have access to the heatsink here, so we can clean that. In this case, it's actually really clear already. There is very little dust inside this machine as it stands, so there isn't anything to do here as such, but we could use a can of compressed air on the fan blades and across the heatsink there to clean it out if it was necessary. We can then fold back over the fan, making sure to route through that cable and placing it back down with the tape in the same position, and refit the 3 screws. For the thermal paste, we're then just going to use, I'm just using a little bit of IPA to try and soften this, and then wipe it off from the heatsink. As much as possible. And then the same on the CPU side. So again, just going to use a little bit of this. It's non-conductive contact cleaner I'm using here. And again, just want to remove as much as we can off of the main CPU die. We can see here, so we have the processor, and then we have what's called the PCH, or the chipset separate die. And Lenovo only put thermal paste on the CPU die, so we're going to do the same here, just to match the original application. So with that cleaned up, we now just want to apply a small amount of new thermal compound onto the die. This will press down and spread out as we put on the heatsink. So what we're going to do is take our serviced heatsink and fan and press that on. I'm then just going to lift it, and we can see that's covered the full CPU die. So we can press back down and screw back on the heatsink. With this, we work diagonally, so do one corner and then the other. And with the 4 screws in place, all that's left to do is to remember to plug back in our fan, because there is nothing more annoying than finishing a repair and realising you didn't plug the fan back in. That simply slots in like so. And lastly, inside the system itself, we have how to replace the DC jack. It is quite easy for these to be damaged if, say, someone trips over the power cord, but fortunately on these it is not actually part of the mainboard. Instead, it is a separate connector. So what we're going to do is, up here we have the cable comes in and into the mainboard, and we want to grab at the bend and pull up so that that cable releases. it then on the other side is held in. We have a single screw here. We can undo this, and with the cover released, we can remove our DC jack. To then refit it is a very simple case, so make sure you have it the right way up. So white cable to the front, and press down into place. Then we need to slot in the cover. So slot that over the top of the jack. Screw it back down and refit the connector. You want to just make sure this cable's tucked so nicely around the hinge. Now what I'm going to do now is, because replacing the keyboard actually can be done with the back panel on, I'm going to refit the batteries and the back panel, and then we'll look at the keyboard at the end. So for the batteries, I'm going to start with the top battery. So what we want to do is we have these two little tabs here, and we want to make sure the battery is slotted in under those, and then press down in, and then refit our two screws. As I say, links for batteries and other components are all in the description, so if you need to replace these, you should be able to find the details there. And then the bottom battery, the same. We have to slot this in under these two pieces here, press down so it reconnects, and then in this case 3 screws to hold it back in the chassis. Obviously, if you've been finding this video useful, do please consider giving us a like and a subscribe if you want to see more videos as we create them. And also, we do have the option of super thanks if you want to give anything towards the continued running of the channel. Fitting the back panel back on. So we take our panel, place it to the front and clip down. So you should hear it connect like so. And then we're going to start with the front 2 screws. And then the rearward 3. Again, we're just going to press, make sure the little plastic snaps engage. And with that, our work inside the laptop is done. To replace the keyboard then, we can see here we have this another little screw which has 2 positions. So currently it is facing vertically and it is locked. So by twisting that here to a sort of 45-degree angle, we unlock it. We can now turn the system over and open it up. Now with that done, what we actually have is a keyboard held in with screws, but we can't see these. So what we're going to do is take our pry tool, and there are these 2 little slots here. However, the pry tool is a little too wide to go into these. So instead, I'm just going to use it along the base here. And what we want to do is ease the frame of the keyboard slightly up. So put in and push up. And we're going to do this across the keyboard. And once we have this done, we press down and into those. There we go. So yeah, using those slots, you need to press down into them a bit. And what we can see here is we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screws holding the keyboard in. And we're going to take our screwdriver and undo these. These are retained in the keyboard, so you should not need to remove them. And with that done, we should then be able to, on this front edge, front or back, front edge, get in underneath the keyboard. Oh, 6th screw hidden on this end. Being sort of black screws on a black keyboard, they're not the easiest to see. But with that done, we can lift up the keyboard and turn it over. Here we then have 2 ribbon connectors. So the first, on the end here, we're going to get our pry tool under the clasp and flip it up and disconnect the keyboard. And then the same again for the second. And with that, we can lift our keyboard free. To refit it, it's then obviously the reverse of this. So we bring back in the keyboard, slot it fully in on that first ribbon connector, making sure it's nice and straight. Sorry if my hand is blocking the view a little bit there. And then for the second, so again, sorry if it's not the clearest view of how to do this, but we want to slot it in straight as possible so that that white line goes all the way across the front of the socket. We're going to have to angle the keyboard to get it in right. So with that in place, we can then close the socket and bring our keyboard back over. We then want to push it in at the top and then bring it in at the bottom, and we should be able to screw it back into place. Obviously, if it's in the right place, the screws will go in. If it's not, they will not, and you'll need to adjust it a bit further. But doing up the 6 screws, we can then again take our pry tool and we want to just ease back down the frame so that it clips in at the bottom of the keyboard here. Close over our lid, turn over our laptop and relock the keyboard into place. So as I said before, I hope you found this video really helpful. Do let me know in the comments if it helped you repair your T460s, and give us a like if it did, and subscribe if you'd like to see more. Thanks for watching.